talk about that quite often. I think we've pivoted away from needing some finite knowledge set to an infinite skill set.
Yes.
Because you can teach someone the knowledge that they need to do the work, but how we do work now is very different. You're going to work on a team, you're going to work collaboratively, you've got to come up with ideas, you've got to be able to present your idea, you've got to be able to take criticism of the idea and use it as a growth opportunity to then go back and reiterate on the problem. Because, I think often, in the past, it was very time bound. You've got a month. And at the end of the month, you're going to present something and we're going to go with that. But now it's like week after week after week, it's like, let's present, let's get feedback, let's go back, let's do it again. And it could take months to get to the end game because you're just trying to get to that, that sweet spot. And how well do we as a school or school system or education, develop soft skills that are more important than knowledge?
Hi, welcome, and my fellow school leaders. I'm Avinash, co-founder at Tomo Club. And today in our Tomo Club podcast series, we have the principal of John Creek High School. It's a part of Fulton County Schools, Chris Shearer. And Chris, it's so amazing to have you in the discussion today around AI in schools. And before John Creek, Chris has held many positions from Verizon Innovative Learning School to Microsoft Showcase School to Georgia Lighthouse School. And he has been pushing AI training. I read so many about the Promptathon from Microsoft that you hosted at your school. And so I think it's going to be very action-packed, real conversation about AI implementation. So welcome to our podcast today, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to have the conversation and look at kind of this new emerging technology and what its impact is with education.
Absolutely. So Chris, before we get into it, can you give us a snapshot of what got you to education in the first place? And is that reason still valid for you?
Yeah. So I originally went to school to study finance. So I do have a business degree from the University of Kentucky. Graduated in 1993 when the economy wasn't the greatest, and jobs were not plentiful. So kind of pivoted and rethought, what I wanted to do with my life, and had a lot of educators in my family that were, very fulfilled, very happy, loved what they did. And so I went back to school to get a bachelor's in history and then a master's in education, and started my work and really, from the jump and still today, my why is around, giving kids that opportunity, to find their passion and path, that they're going to walk on, as adults. And so that's, as a leader, that's what drives me, what's going to be best for kids, what's really going to get kids juiced, to reach their maximum when they leave us as high school graduates.
No, absolutely. I think that's a very common pattern, that it's always student first. And I'm pretty sure being a principal of a high school, you must be having a lot more, I would say, serious conversation with kids because, they have opinions, they have views. So it's not like, it's a very different experience talking to an elementary or a middle school principal than a high school.
Yeah,
for me.
For sure.
But by the way, like right now, when there is I haven't heard a lot of principal sticking to one school for a long time. You have been in your same school for 26 years, right?
No, I've been here this is my 8th year, which is, for a high school principal is a long, long gig. But this is my 27th year in education total, all of it with Fulton County. But like I said, the last 8 plus years here at Johns Creek High School.
No, that's beautiful, because in that way you have a different edge, different understanding of the way at least the entire county works. So that's definitely beautiful. So let me just get to the point. What's your playbook for AI at a high school of, let's say, almost 1,800?
Yeah, I mean, I think with implementing anything in education, it's always start small.
Mm.
And so, it's introducing concepts, it's talking about, what's coming down the pike, and then finding those people that are sparked by that immediately. And then really kind of pouring into those people, giving them the resources and the support they need, to drive that work so that others, and often I think most educators are a little leery of most anything. They like what's worked, especially high school teachers, kind of what's tried and true they want to stick to, and they don't want to get outside their comfort zone too much. And so when I find teachers that do want to get outside their comfort zone and kind of push things around a little bit, then I really, lean into those people and then let them kind of influence others, start talking to others about the work. And AI was no different. So, I've got my engineering teacher, my computer science teacher. As soon as ChatGPT dropped 3 years ago, I think my engineering teacher's son, who was in high school, was in it, kicking it around, experimenting with it. And then Steve, being who Steve is, went in there and immediately started kicking the tires as a teacher. Like, how does this help me be better? How does it help my students be better? And so he and Ray really started implementing it from the jump, and implementing it into their classes. And really what it's been, is kind of that thought partner. I mean, it does a lot more than that, but, has really been kind of a foundational starting point for our computer science and engineering teachers. And so that's been the playbook, to start small, to find those early adopters, and then let it scale up, from there and get out into the entire building.
Makes sense. So, but how did you identify those high flyers? You mentioned engineering and science teacher. Like, did you have some one-off conversations, or did you do any survey initially? How did you identify?
No, with this in particular thing, I mean, Steve, because we're close, came to me immediately and said, "Hey, my son introduced me to this thing," and we of course had heard about it. And he goes, "I think I'm going to start looking at this in my class. Ray and I are going to see how this thing works with kids. We think it works like this. We're going to see. I think it'll work like this for me as a teacher. I'm going to see." And so for that, it is the way that went down. But I do, after being here for 8 years, definitely know who the teachers are that are willing to fall down, as it were, take chances, try out new things on their kids. And so those are the people that I will go to when it comes to these things that come to me or I hear about. And it's like, "Hey, this sounds interesting. You might, would you kick this around in your classroom with some of your students and see how it works, and then see if it can be, kind of played out across the building and other parts of the building for students."
No, makes sense. Of course, you understand those teachers, so it must be easier for you to identify. So walk us through like a complete bigger picture of where all AI is currently being used, from administration to teaching to planning to personalization. If you can give us an idea of how it's been used right now, and have you guys, what kind of impact have you seen? Have you seen teachers saving time, student getting better at grades, like some real measurable metrics? Have you seen any kind of impact on those lines?
Yeah. So, like I said, engineering and computer science have been doing it for a few years at a high level. And you definitely see efficiency has improved. I would say that Steve and Ray probably are able to do one more project per semester because of the time savings with the other projects that they've done, and how they're using it. An example would be, there's a lot of coding involved in some of our engineering projects, and you get one thing wrong in a code and the whole thing doesn't work, right? And so last year, I think it was last year, we had a student who pushed go on his code and it didn't work. And so he goes to Steve, Dr. Swigert, and he's like, "Hey, and Swigert was like, "Put it in Copilot," because that's what we use now. And the kid's like, "What? Like Copilot? Like, it's not going to know." And Steve's like, "Just do it. Just copy your code, put it into Copilot, and see what it tells you." And so he puts it in. Copilot diagnoses the problem immediately. The kid goes in and makes that change to his code, and then it works. And so what would have taken 2 or 3 days in the past where the kid has to tear his whole code down and try to find the comma that's missing, right? Copilot does it in 15 seconds. And
Mm-hmm.
so it saves 3 days literally, and he's off and running in his project, and so I think you see, and then the other part is, for, those two teachers. And I think in English, you're going to see kids start to use kind of Copilot and generative AI as that initial foundational building block. What they would have done, kind of brainstorming, they're going to let AI do the brainstorming and then be able to jump off immediately and take things a little further than they've been taken in the past. My challenge to any teacher this year, as Copilot and school AI are now widespread in Fulton County, I've told every teacher, I said, you need to put your assignments in Copilot
Mm-hmm.
and see what the outcome is. And if the outcome is what you want, that's all you want from the kids is exactly what Copilot does, then you've got to change that assignment. Because if generative AI can do the assignment for the kid, then that's what the kid's going to do. And that's it. And that's all you're going to get. And there's really not any learning there. The kid can go further. You can go further. Now let's go further, and increase the rigor in your assignment, add a couple of steps, go a little deeper now that you've got the opportunity to do that. And I think that those are the kind of things we're going to see, this year, in this building, as generative AI gets used more widespread than what it's been used in the past.
Now, that's a very interesting take. I think number of projects done extra per semester is a good metric to see the efficiency, because otherwise, how would you calculate hours used in it? And also, this is also a very good idea that if the assignment output by Copilot is similar to what you expect the best student to do, then change the assignment itself. So any example over here, because I think people do share this thought, but there's not enough example backing this statement. Do you have any idea, any example where teachers changed the assignment and it worked out better?
Not yet. I mean, I'll probably start to gain some perspective there in the next couple of weeks. We're just 12 days into school, so as those things occur, whether it's an English class, science project, social studies, I'll start to hear from some of the teachers and get that feedback from them, in that regard, but don't have great examples yet. But I would assume and expect that there will be some nice stories coming out, in terms of changes. And I know both Ray and Steve, computer science and engineering, have done that with theirs. As they've seen what Copilot can do, they've tweaked and changed, what the expectations are, in some of the projects that they have.
No, absolutely. Looking forward to those stories. Also, have the teachers started using AI to upload the assignment of students and do assessments on that? Or
I think not yet. And school AI, the other tool that we have, has that capability, where they can assign things to kids. Kids can do the things in there, turn those things in, and it's supposed to be synced with Canvas, that we also use. So I would see that is going to occur as we start to use school AI more this school year, which is a new tool for us.
Have you guys started using school AI this year only, or is it like?
Yeah, this year. It just came. The county just purchased it and just went live for us this school year. So teachers are starting to look at using it for planning, and assignments, and the kids. I think it works very similarly as Conmigo does as part of Khan Academy, where the kids can go in there and do some brainstorming, with the chat bot. And the nice thing that I've seen is that it will not give the kid the answer. It always wants to know what the kid knows, and then start to narrow it down and give them the kid what they really need, not everything, which has been great.
No, I agree with you. Though I have a different opinion on using AI tools right now for school and students, that any kind of product, because the whole ecosystem is evolving very quickly, sticking to product might not be that productive, because I had a discussion with a lot of school leaders. They are thinking that there has to be a flexibility in the mindset that students can try different products and see what works for them.
Sure, 100%.
It's a very evolving, I would say, ecosystem altogether.
Yeah.
Tell me about this Microsoft Promptathon that you guys did. What skills did
Yeah.
you create? How did you scaffold it, and how did you judge the outcomes?
Yeah, so I've got a good friend that works, a few good friends that work for Microsoft. And so as again, as Steve and Ray were doing their work, I reached out to them and said, hey, I've got some guys really, knocking this thing around, and doing some good work. And so one of the people at Microsoft that I'm good friends with had, works with schools and had done promptathons, but had only done them with colleges and universities, had not done them with a high school yet. And because of the work we had done, she thought that this would be a good place to start.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a day off. I had about 40 students that volunteered to come in on their day off. And we broke them into pairs, I believe. So we had about 20 teams. Steve and Andrea, the Microsoft person, put together a challenge, of creating a business that they couldn't do in an hour without AI.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had this business challenge. They had to create a business, do the plan, do the economics of it all, and then do a 3 to 5 minute presentation, on the plan. And we had Microsoft people there and some Fulton County people that were here to judge, that the outcomes. And so we had three groups, that kind of rose to the top, as far as the promptathon is concerned. And then from there, Microsoft came in and did a piece. They've done two pieces, on the work here in the school, focusing on Steve and Ray, but also talking to the kids a lot about how they use generative AI to be better students, get better products, better outcomes, that kind of stuff. So it's been really cool, to be in that space and to have our school and our teachers, highlighted and then celebrated, for the great work that they're doing.
Wow. Any striking business ideas that came through those hackathon?
I mean, I can't. I mean, there were some, and it is, my kids like really floor me constantly. And when I was growing up, and maybe even when you were growing up, there wasn't that, go big or go home mentality. It was pretty limited.
Yeah.
You weren't super creative, but kids have so many tools at their disposal now, to kind of scale up these ideas. And then, our community is very affluent, so they've got parents that can support these ideas that they have. And those sorts of things. So there were some, and again, they're not coming to me, but there were some ideas that were pretty striking. And one thing that, not AI necessarily, but, this new kind of toy called Zipstring that's all the rage right now was invented by a student from Johns Creek High School, using the things that he learned in his engineering class. So, those kinds of things are cool to see here at the school. And I think we'll continue to see those kinds of things occur, as we go forward, and AI being, possible kind of help in that regard too.
No, absolutely agreed. In the initial part, you mentioned that it's difficult to change when you are a good performing student at school, right?
Yeah.
Basically, you're a part of a massive district with 88,000 kids.
Yeah.
How do you create, or how do you champion a culture of innovation or projects in a system where standardized test is the metric for testing?
Yeah.
How do you go around the unique bureaucratic or logistical hurdles?
Yeah, I think a lot of it just goes to, the supportive environment you create as a leader. Regardless of course, we're high performing. We want to continue to be high performing, and what we've been doing, for a decade or whatever works for us, obviously, because we get, great metrics, great outcomes from standardized tests. But, that is a pretty limited view. That only says so much about a kid. And so I think myself and my team, have created an environment where teachers feel supported to experiment and do different things and do fun things and do, things outside the box. Not all of them, but, and I'm fine with that. If I can get 5, 6, 7 teachers, 8 teachers that are always like, hey, I want to do this differently or do that differently, the answer is never no. It's always going to be yes. Let's talk about it. Let's see where your head is at. we're not going to destroy the kid or anything like that or set them back. We're going to make mistakes. That's part of the process. What do we learn from those mistakes? How do we get better because of the mistake? But I've always been someone in my entire career as a leader to say yes, and not to say no very often, so that there is that innovation and there is that ability that people are allowed to put themselves out there and they're not going to get shot down because they made a mistake.
No, actually, your initial answer that I'm gonna go small, I'm gonna go one step at a time. It actually answered my 2 or 3 questions around the same thing, because again, I had a idea about the inertia of change is gonna be hard. Let's forget the bureaucracy level. Let's talk about internal within the same district, within the same school. If something is working out, teachers don't want to change quickly. But as you said, a low cost, low commitment, no downside, low or no downside kind of experiments actually rectifies a lot of those questions. I also want to understand about since right now career readiness as a whole concept is very closely linked to AI readiness. Because if I look at any career right now, there is a massive tectonic shift coming in right now with the way they are operating AI internally. Media plans, healthcare, engineering, construction, management of hotels, or like you pick up anything, and AI is playing a huge role in changing the way the employees have to work. So, have you guys did any classes on that aspect for the students?
Not necessarily. Certainly that's got to be on some level kind of a county leadership idea, if we're going to roll something like that out. But I do, when I meet with parents and I meet with students, I talk about that, especially as it relates to AI. I mean, if you don't understand it, and how it's going to make you more efficient or how businesses are using it for efficiencies, then you're going to get left behind and there's not going to be much work for you at the end of the day. And we can talk about, what the downfalls of AI are, all the things, right? But, as to your point, businesses are on board. Because at the smallest level or at the most basic level, it makes things more efficient. Like at the end, it solves problems quicker. It figures a lot of things out. And so some jobs are being, done away with because now AI can do that job, that logistics kind of piece, that planning piece. And so kids have got to understand at our level that that's a thing. So if you're only going to use Copilot, to make you more efficient, whatever that looks like, let's model that for you, show you what that looks like, and see how this is a tool to help that side of the equation, right? And then maybe what it might do to help you be a better learner, a more efficient learner, and take yourself a little further. I mean, of course, the danger, is that it comes in and looks like a crutch. Right. And we let it do too much for us. We stop thinking, we just plug in and just let it do everything. Right. And that's not good either. So it's like, when do we find the sweet spot of where it exists best for us? What's not good, that kind of thing. And I think we're still in the initial phases of trying to figure that out.
No, I think you said something which was a solution to what you exactly said as a problem, is to change the type of assignments. For example, in my organization, if I look at different sectors of work that we have, let's say if somebody is working in sales, and if I break it down to the task that a sales guy has to do, is prospecting, identifying who will be a potential buyer, identifying the right channels to talk to them, identifying the right communication content which will attract their attention, solve a problem, be a consultant. So basically, I would have a 3 or 4 member team who are doing these things in tandem. Now, every sales guy in the company has to start thinking from a model perspective. They have to start thinking that, let me break it down my work into subtasks, and what are those tasks which I can put it on ChatGPT or put it on a Copilot and get the results. And so that I am responsible for the outcomes. So let's say even if it is at the end of the day, data analysis, reporting, giving me numbers. That same individual now has a power of 3 or 4 people who are gonna work
Yeah.
with. So
Yep.
as you said, if similarly the assignments given to the students has much more similar kind of real world problems, then
Hmm.
their assignment are supposed to be submitting a broader picture than
Hmm.
just one task.
Yeah.
So if I were to give them a task that identify 10 businesses in your locality which needs help, that's a very small task. We would rather have to give them a task like suggest 5 strategies and how will it be rolled out with a timeline to work with them
Hmm.
and work on
Yeah.
them. So I think the complexity or the benchmarking or the basic expectation from every uh, job or employee has just gone up. So
Yeah.
the inequity, like there was a transition where people who were not comfortable with computers, they still had a breathing room. I would say there's
Yeah.
still some jobs left. Right now, the inequity gap is gonna be so massive that either you work with AI or you don't have a job.
Yeah,
So
I think that's true. I think that's 100% true. And it is going to be tough. At a school like mine, obviously, kids are going to have those advantages and be able to take, advantage of the new, workspace that exists.
yeah,
And then you've got other kids that aren't necessarily going to have that initial leg up to get there. And so, what does that look like as a society where we start to fill those gaps in and allow everyone that access, to work, good jobs and be successful and all the things that we want or should want, for all the kids.
I'll give you one more. My internal team policy. So right now,
Hmm.
when we are hiring people, recently I've started to hire more people from psychology background, and
Huh.
provided that they're interested to work in marketing or sales or program associates or
Right.
operations. So if they have that interest and if they have a psychology background, I like to hire them more.
Hmm.
Why? Because the skills that I literally want right now is people skill. Of course,
Yes.
they need to have comfort working with AI, and they should be excited. They should not be have some kind of inhibitions there. But if I look
Yeah.
from the skills point of view, they should know how to articulate themselves. They should know how to present their thoughts. They should be able to be more consistent, more disciplined, have more ownership. So all comes
Yeah.
down to how emotionally mature they are.
Yeah. Yeah. And,
And
and I talk about that quite often.
mm,
I think we've pivoted away from needing some finite knowledge set
mm,
to an infinite skill set.
yes.
Because any like you can teach someone the knowledge that they need to do the work, but how we do work now is very different. You're going to work on a team, you're going to work collaboratively, you've got to come up with ideas, you've got to be able to present your idea, you've got to be able to take criticism of
Mm,
the idea and use it as a growth opportunity, to then go back and reiterate on the problem. Because, I think often, in the past, it was very time bound. You've got a month. And at the end of the month, you're going to present something and we're going to go with that. But now it's like week after week after week. It's like, let's present, let's get feedback, let's go back, let's do it again. And it could take months to get to the end game because you're just trying to get to that, that sweet spot. And how well do we as a school or school system or education, develop soft skills that are more important than knowledge, because we can look it up, so memorizing the preamble or who the third president of the United States is or any of that stuff is not important anymore. Because you can get that information readily if you need it. But do you have the skill set, to your point, to do the work? And what you found is that people that have a psychology background kind of have those skills, and I can teach them everything else. And I think that's an important takeaway for educators for sure.
no, yeah, I also say hard skills are getting commoditized, and soft skills is very hard to teach. So,
Yeah.
as an business owner, I would not like to invest. I might like to invest a month or two for somebody to upskill, perform, but I can't give more than that. And I think soft skills is something which is something you learn during your prime age in school. You learn in your early career in a college. So I can't wait as an employer to let you hone those skills. I would want them to be existing from the day one. I want the team should be easy to collaborate and they're able to have fun. I think then only ideas will come in because right now, because the very definition of how things work has changed. If let's say just 2 quarters back, we used to create an objective and key results. Right now, and we used to have these kind of notions that if you do multiple things at the same time, you're going to dilute your attention. You're going to substandard output. Not anymore. You can actually work on a couple of projects and at the same time. So the bandwidth that we have has just gone up. I think time is the most precious and finite currency on this world, in this universe. And I think this technology has just given us time back. Teachers having more time to talk to students. Teachers have much more time to talk philosophy to each other of how they want to treat students and how they want to grow students. So I think it's a beautiful. But at the same time, what as a principal or what are those areas where you thought I want AI to create impact the quickest? Any specific priority metric that you created that let's use it here for the first time because we are struggling here, or this is a pretty solvable problem with AI?
Not necessarily. I'm certainly looking for the efficiencies to get there, right? Quicker lesson planning, quicker, ideas, assessment creation, that kind of thing. And then the other, I think, possibility or big place that AI can be helpful is around personalization. When you're a general ed teacher, for example, and you've got 150 students that you teach in a day, you cannot get to all 150 kids. Like, that's just not going to occur. And now, at least on some level, AI exists that can at least answer those questions, right? And there may still be some follow-up that you need to do, but at least every kid has a resource that they can go to and get some information that's going to be helpful that they didn't get before, right? In the past, if a kid didn't get to ask their question, they didn't get to answer their question, like, ever.
Right.
Now, with School AI, for example, or Copilot, either one, at least there's a resource where a kid can go, put the prompt in, ask the question, and get, some information that's going to be helpful, and allow them to move forward and not get stuck. So I'm excited about the personalization that exists, and still, problems there where, AI will make things up and the slop and all that kind of stuff. But, at least there's something that exists that didn't exist before that should be helpful to our students, in being able to move forward where before they weren't really getting to move forward. If that makes sense.
Right. No, I agree with you. So I always ask this question that let's say if you would want one AI tool in the world, which may or may not exist, we don't know. What would be that problem you want that AI to solve for? What's the biggest problem you want AI to solve for right now?
In education, I think it's personalization. To be able to get every single kid the help they need in real time is the problem we've always had. And the reason that kids slip through the cracks and don't get as far and can't read, can't add, all of those sorts of things that have plagued us in education, AI seems to be the thing that solves that problem finally. There's still probably a long way to go, but what I see from School AI, what I see from Conmigo, those tools exist and they are pretty good and they'll get better. And so I think that is going to be the biggest game changer that we have, is the ability to get, help and personalization to students that we've just not been able to do before.
So the current products, you don't think they are there yet in terms of giving actual.
I mean, yeah, I mean they are, but I mean, like anything, AI, multiplies and gets better every month. And so when it comes to the things that we hear about that, some of these things allow kids to have inappropriate conversations with AI and will make things up if it can't answer the question. It wants to answer it. Must give you an answer, and it's going to. And then sometimes you're getting an answer that's not appropriate or wasn't right. Those are the things that are problematic right now. But I'd say probably 80, 85, maybe 90% okay. And then there's this 10% that still needs to be fixed and solved for. And I know they continue to solve for it. But those are the things that as educators, we always have to be aware of. What are the conversations that you're having? What's the information you're getting? And as we see that bad information is getting to kids, we've got to turn around and share that with whoever the software developer is that's created that tool, so that they can shut that down or fix that or whatever, so that kids are getting 100% accurate information.
I have another point of view of what personalization actually can mean from the student perspective. So if you look at curriculum, it is a standard curriculum for all the students, irrespective of their learning. At the instructional material or that instruction given by the teacher in the classroom or the assignments given to the students and the evaluation done for the students, these all have a standard rubric. So I think the true personalization can only come because as an educator, I prepare for an average of a class when I'm gonna give. So my brighter kids or kids who are quick learners, they feel bored, and the learners have some learning gaps, they still find it hard to catch up. So who is that instruction actually catering to? Is it catering to maybe 30% of the audience or 40% of the audience? Right. Rest 60% is feeling lost. So I think that true personalization is a long way to go. But then but I think a lot of things can happen right now with free tools as well, where teachers can create multiple copies of the lesson plans. They can create multiple copies of assignments, and even the assessments can be very one-on-one, because if you have a rubric of each student, and so of course when they go and do SATs, they're going to be mapped on a common scale so that get the college admissions. But the college admissions themselves are actually now want to know your personal story before they give you, an admission. So if you understand, it has become an eligibility test than a qualification test.
No, I would agree. I mean, you definitely have, and we're not there, but I mean, you definitely have an opportunity with generative AI that can create, individual learning plans for every single kid in your school that is dynamic, and gives the kid what they need, provides the rigor that's needed, the remediation that's needed. Because to your point, if we're talking about the rule of thirds, you are, at the end of the day, as a teacher, kind of the USA Today of teaching, right? You're trying to capture the average. You're not teaching to the New York Times because that's too high, too difficult, whatever. But AI is going to give you the ability to do that, potentially, where you do create alternative, assessments, alternative assignments, a little more rigor or remediation one way or the other, based on your average. I think that potential exists, but it's still, I think, probably not quite there yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I usually imagine what would the classroom look like, because if everyone's learning in their own,
for real.
Let's say if 30 kids, if there's 20 kids in a classroom and they're all learning at their own pace, they're all, you can just imagine that 20 timelines going in a classroom for each kid. Then maybe the classroom time can become more like an idea sharing platform or that discussion platform. It can become a playground of sorts where they're just having fun, because I think there's gonna be like a dramatic shift coming in few years.
I think so. Yeah, I think so
So
for
yeah,
sure.
it's a very fun time, personally speaking, for me, exploring this. So yeah, I think those are great points. What advice would you have for other school leaders who are exploring AI adoption right now for the first time?
I think you just got to be open. You've got to be able to be okay with where it takes you. A lot of people I know are going to be very cautious and they don't want to do it. But again, there are going to be people in your building that want to do this.
Hmm.
And I think as a leader, you've got to support them in doing that. 80%, 85%, whatever, are going to kind of stick to the tried and true.
Hmm.
But then you're going to have these early adopters, these people that want to be creative and innovative. And as a leader, you've got to support those people because great opportunity exists there, and you've got to let them see what the opportunity is. And I think as a leader, that's how you figure this thing out. Because it's not my responsibility to be the expert. I mean, I've got to know about it. I've got to be familiar with it enough so that I can support others. But I've got to be the leader that lets someone become the expert in it.
Yeah.
To see what the tool is and what its capabilities are, and be okay with the pluses and the minuses that go with it. Be able to have the conversation with my community about what we're doing, and the benefits of that. And I think that's real leadership, and supporting all your people doing what they want to do.
No, absolutely. So yeah, those were very exciting conversation. I think we did touch upon multiple aspects, and I do see that though you guys had a heads up, you have been talking, like you had a conversation about AI 2 years back, and still
Mhm.
I would say just we have just scratched the surface of implementation.
Yeah.
I think this podcast has to like a long way to go. And I think when we look at
Yeah.
this recording 6 months later, we'll have a much different outlook at
I think so.
these questions. So thank you so much
Yeah.
for your time, Chris. I think it was
Thank
wonderful
you.